Hey, hello.
Brian.
Hello, John. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to Intersections Live. We are excited to be here with you again. One of our last shows for 2020 before we bring in the new year. John, how you doing today?
Doing really well. Got that kind of end of year energy, finishing things up and so forth and so on. So it's been a good patch. Just to remind our esteemed audience that next week we'll be taking a break around the Christmas holiday, and then our final show of the year, and we're in the woodshed figuring out how to make it a really good one, a button scene for the end of 2020. Is going to take place on the 29th, because we figured that many of you, especially of the quarantini set, we're going to be celebrating the end of the year, closer to the 30th or maybe even earlier. And we didn't want to interfere with that. So the last show of the year will be on December 29th.
I don't know about you, John, but I'm looking forward to ushering in 2021 and then re-celebrating the new year on January 20th, 2021.
All right. There'll be this palpable feeling of we made it.
Indeed. Well, for everybody who's joining in, before I officially welcome you, please remember that you are part of this experience. So share with us your comments, your questions, your ideas. Let us know where you're tuning in from around the world, because we'd love to hear from you. And before we bring on our first guest, let's welcome you officially to Intersections. Intersections, for those who are just now being introduced, and for those who have been following us since the beginning, welcome back. Intersections is a weekly conversational jam session. Each week, we dive deep into the intersections of technology, innovation, culture, ideas. We bring diverse personalities, incredible friends and colleagues and people we admire from all over the world to share their views together in the greater service of understanding and unlearning. And that's a big one, especially as we reinvent the future coming out of this pandemic. So I'd like to introduce my co-host and also co-founder of Intersections, John Kao. The Economist has called him Mr. Creativity. He's a serial innovator. He's also an incredible musician and artist. He's a thought leader, entrepreneur, and advisor. He's played a prominent role, one of those roles that is actually respected and followed and admired all over the world in terms of innovation and business creativity. He's taught at Harvard Business School. He's served as visiting faculty at MIT Media Lab at Stanford. He's also a Tony-nominated producer of film and stage, and he wrote the best-selling Jamming, the Art and Discipline of Business Creativity. John, welcome.
Well, with that bath of a biography, let me acknowledge that Brian's really my missing half in terms of doing this tour of innovation and its 21st century flavor, which we're trying to outline in terms of the mission of the show. And Brian's been generally considered one of the seminal thinkers in the digital era, and in some respects has created a lot of the ways that we think about digital innovation and as it applies to products and services and experiences and so on. From a formal role perspective, he's the global innovation evangelist for Salesforce, but also a polymath in terms of a keynote speaker and a celebrated multi-book author. I don't know how he does it given everything else he does, but it's always a pleasure to jam with Brian.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that, John. And I love jamming with you as well, and looking forward to all of the growth stages that we're going to explore in 2021. We have an incredible audience from all around the world already. This is fantastic. And we'll feature you here on screen. Also, your questions and comments, please feel free to share. You are part of the experience. So I'd like to bring up our first guest, David Aaker. He's actually a longtime friend. David, before we officially bring you on, I'm going to bathe you in some accolades as well. David is regarded as the father of modern branding. Certainly before I had the wonderful opportunity to call him a friend and colleague, I did follow his work as I was coming up in Silicon Valley. He's currently the vice chair at Profit. Throughout his tenured career, he's become a recognized authority on branding and has developed several key concepts, including the Aaker brand vision model. I most recently engaged with him around brand stories. He has authored, I think, hundreds of articles for sure, but I think at least 16 books. And he is the professor emeritus at Haas Business School of Business, UC Berkeley. My goodness, he's also a revered speaker and thought leader, and a good friend. So David, welcome to the show.
Well, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to see you, my friend. It's been far too long, and you have to say hi to Jennifer and the family for me as well.
Thank you. I will.
Excellent. Well, why don't we just kick things off? And the way that this is going to flow, David, is that I'll start asking you a few questions, turn it over to John, and before you know it, our time will be up, but we will be all the more enlightened and smarter as a result. So, David, kind of share with us, from brand stories, well, actually, let me take a step back. Where are you focused right now as a result of this pandemic?
Well, I've been interested in a long time on a higher purpose, especially a higher social purpose. And in fact, in almost all my books, I have a chapter that involves that higher purpose. And so that's my subject of my next book. And there's been so many books about that general topic that the challenge was, how would I ever add value? And so what I've settled in on is I'm going to talk about how branding interacts with higher purpose. And so if you're a company that wants to develop a social purpose, then well, first of all, I firmly believe, along with Michael Porter and his seminal articles back in 2011, that you really need to develop social programs that help the business. It can be by reducing costs somehow with energy efficiency, but more likely it's going to be by enhancing the driver brand, the brand that drives the business, and the social program in many cases is uniquely suited to create energy and news and visibility to a brand. You take a brand like Lifebuoy, they have a program called Help a Child Reach 5, which is a hand washing program in India. And they created 3 videos around that got 44 million views. This is for a bar soap. So, but it also can be involved in positioning the driver brand. Like in that case, the Help a Child Reach 5 program sort of supports and reinforces the legacies, heritage stories of Lifebuoy that was founded in the 1880s, all around trying to provide an attack against cholera, which was the pandemic of the day, through hand washing. So it's got this long heritage and credibility, and then this reinforces that. But it also creates a customer base, because customers are really more comfortable with a brand or an offering or a company that shares their values. And so if you have a company that's trying to reduce the 2 million or so deaths of kids under 5 every year, that means a lot more than somebody's trying to make money selling soap.
Wow. Well, it's to say that's timely, even though this is a topic that has been discussed over time, to say that's timely is an understatement. In my own research, in addition to some recent Salesforce research that was just published, we've seen values become front and center as a result of this pandemic. And if you think about it, it's not anything that should be a surprise. I mean, we're going through a global pandemic. We're going through incredible political turmoil in the United States. We're watching economic devastation everywhere. And essentially what happens during those times is that as a human being, it's very natural to question the meaning of life, to rethink where you are, what makes you happy, how you spend money, how you save money, what success looks like. And so your values start to change. It also is affected by the fact that we're experiencing anxiety and chaos and anger and frustration and a lot of things that really kind of motivate us to control, alt, delete our own baseline or our own beliefs. And so, David, one of the things I'd love to hear from you is, what do executives need to hear that's different this time? Certainly, I'm sure that they've all gone through the exercises of mission statements and vision statements, but this is nothing like then.
Well, my take is that the conversation is changed from what it was 10 or 20 years ago. Back then, we were talking about, what is the soul of capitalism, and is the business only there to serve the shareholders, or is it something broader? It has to be concerned with the community, the society, the planet, and the employees, and so on. Well, in my take is that argument is done. It's over. The good guys won. So now the problem is, what do you do? I mean, the dog caught the car. I mean, how do you do that? And it turns out it's not easy. It turns out that even if you get religion, it's not easy to find the right social program, to find a social purpose that fits your organization, to deal with the resulting brand family that emerges, because you have multiple social programs and so forth. And so that's really the challenge. And again, my take is that people don't realize it, but branding is a large part of the process to get an effective social purpose and social programs. Incidentally, Brian, and I'm going to start out my book with two prologues, two stories of companies I really admire. One is Unilever, but the other is Salesforce. In the B2B space, Salesforce is really an incredible role model that has done so many things, starting with their 111 program.
Well, David, maybe so that I don't sound like a commercial, you could share with everybody what the 111 program is. And then also, I will send a shout out to Mark Benioff, who is a very, very big proponent of stakeholder capitalism, essentially putting people ahead of shareholder value, and essentially saying that, if we could put humans at the center of all of this, that we all win. And he's definitely he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Yep, I think that he and the CEO or the just left CEO of Unilever are among a couple of dozen of CEOs that have really not only been incredible vocal sort of role models, but they also have all walked the walk. It's really quite incredible the extent to which companies are either doing a great job or trying to do a great job along these lines, and Salesforce is right up there. The 111 thing is a founder story, because when Mark Benioff founded Salesforce in 1999 in a small apartment with three other guys, he came to Salesforce with a career at Oracle, during which time he kind of got religion. And some of this happened when he was 2 months in India with some guru that said, it's possible to do social good and run a business. And then he became a believer. And when he came back and started Salesforce, he said, I want to, right at the outset, do something, have a program that's really going to work. And he looked at a lot of other companies and sort of took the best of the best and came up with the idea that we're going to make a commitment to give 1% of our employees time. We're going to give 1% of our earnings or asset and 1% of our product to social causes. And he's gotten 10,000 other companies to subscribe to this idea. I mean, talk about the leverage and the impact. It's not just Salesforce; it's 10,000 other companies, and in fact, Salesforce every year does far more than 111. That's sort of the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's part of our culture with the Ahana that we share those stories internally as well on our internal social network. David, I'm going to turn it over to John, because I don't want to take all of your time, as much as I'd love to do that. And I do hope to maybe have breakfast or brunch with you once we come out of this pandemic, because it would be fun to spend more time with you. John, over to you.
Hey, David. So I have a couple of burning questions I wanted to put before you. One is, I think this notion of social purpose is pretty pervasive now. And in my own experience, there are companies that feel it deeply and put it in their core. And there are others for whom it's kind of a check off the box, veneer. We have to do it because everybody else is doing it. So I guess some of the differentiation would have to do with processes and how they actually engage, which was kind of implicit in something you said a few minutes ago. I wonder if you see any patterns in terms of best or promising practices on the part of companies that actually engage authentically and deeply with this agenda versus those that, just talk about it at the annual meeting or, get the marketing department to write something up in the annual report.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's my observation, and I've tried to quantify this, but I really can't. But my observation is it's pretty hard to find a company that doesn't at least do that, to give lip service to their wanting to be social citizens. but also, there's more and more of those companies are actually doing something, that makes a difference. And there's substance behind most of them. I think that, at least that's my impression, is the trend. Well, my favorite companies are Salesforce and Unilever. Unilever is simply amazing what they have done. They have this. They were 10 years ago. They were among the top of the list of the most environmentally sensitive and progressive companies. That was 10 years ago. And then this guy Paulson came in from Nestle, and he took it up a notch. He created something called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which is a broad-based thing that involves an environmental sector, involves try to make every person life better section, and it's got a diversity section, and it's just a great umbrella for everything they. And then it allows these brands of theirs to do these amazing things. You got not only the Lifebuoy Help Her Reach 5, Child Reach 5, but Dove, the steam stuff of Dove. They just started a brand called Right to a Shower, realizing that like in San Francisco, they got 16 showers for 7,000 homeless. And these people don't have the right to be clean, which not only affects their ability to try to interview for a job, it also affects their self-esteem and confidence and well-being. And so, I mean, it's unbelievable. Lifebuoy created a whole new brand name. It's got sub-brands of dignity, pride, and strength, and they launched this a year ago, and they're doing this conjunction with a company called Lava May, which is started off 6 years ago, sort of converting a bus into a portable shower and toilet that they could go around into the homeless. They do something like a whole bunch of these every month, and that company is now scaled to be global, and they've helped organizations in 13 countries and so on. It's only 7 years old, but the point is that Unilever, they have 6 or 7 brands of soap, but instead of using one of them, they started a new brand, Right to Shower. I mean, and if you look at what Paulson and has said over the years, the logic behind the social effort of theirs, it's really extraordinary.
Yeah, Pullman's an amazing guy. I've had the privilege of spending time with him, and leadership obviously figures in. I had a second question, which I really do want to ask you. And imagine this hypothetical situation where there's a cabinet meeting in January of the new administration, and you're invited to come in and meet with them, and they say, what would your recommendations be about taking steps to rejuvenate, revitalize, redirect the American brand, which has been very clear for many, many years in terms of principles of democracy and generosity and international engagement and whatever else we can kind of pull out of our, somewhat liberal hat. We've gone through a somewhat different period, and there's probably brand confusion out there. If we look at the U.S. as a company, or look at it from the point of view of having a brand, there's confusion out there. It's the brand is somewhat tarnished. What might you recommend? This is me as a large-scale innovation guy that has done a couple of branding exercises for countries and thinks about innovation from a national as well as an enterprise perspective. What might you recommend, just for the heck of it?
Well, I was about 5 or 6 years ago. I attended a conference in Korea that was at the culmination of the Prime Minister's effort to build the Korean brand, and so I was asked that question there. And in Korea, what I said was that, whether you develop a $2 million program or $3 million program or something and do a lot of advertising or public relations, it's not going to do anything. And you've got Samsung and Hyundai and LG, spending hundreds of millions of dollars and creating a presence and representing Korea. So I said, what the most effective thing you can do is to leverage what they're doing and to influence them to keep in mind that they're representing Korea as well as their own business. So anyway, that's one thing I think that applies to the U.S. too. That these incredible companies can be leveraged.
Sure. But is there an aspect to our story that we need to kind of shift or change or emphasize?
Yes, I definitely think there is. And I think these people like Barack Obama and others that draw upon the heritage of our founders and the core values that are represented by amazing stories. I'm sort of big on stories. I wrote this book on stories, but there's this amazing stories around our founders and around our core values, and then to take these stories and make them contemporary and to show how they influence current programs and current issues and current people that are around. And so I think that's sort of the classic branding thing. When you have a problem, what you do is you go back to basics and try to frame the discussion. The other thing, I'm a big fan of George Lakoff, and it's all about framing the discussion. And so we got to understand that and try to frame the discussion the right way. And sort of what that implies is that when you have these people sort of knocking us around the world, and we don't want to argue back. What we want to do is to change the discussion and to make sure that when they think of the U.S., they think in terms of the freedom and democracy and our willingness to stand up to dictators as we did in World War II, and so I think that, just as Lakoff would say, just be persistent upon developing the right frame, and don't go down the path of being defensive on the wrong frame, and that just makes things worse.
Right. Understood. I'm going to throw it back to Brian because we're almost out of time here.
We are out of time, unfortunately, David. It's such a pleasure to listen to you, and I've always felt that way. Thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll be inviting you back once that new book is ready. And in the meantime, happy holidays.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, John.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. And now we're going to bring on someone who, well, gosh, I've known him. I think you've known him for the better part of two decades now, and he's a friend. He's an industry luminary. He's a brand. He's also someone I expect to kind of be a regular voice on the show, just to share his commentary on basically everything. Let's welcome at Scobleizer, or Robert Scoble, or Scoble, however you want to refer to him. It's all of the above.
I'll be your resident asshole. How about that?
Shoot, where's that bleep button? I had it somewhere around here.
Everybody needs one of those, I think. I mean, the asshole, not the button.
We can go PG-13 on this show, can we? Is this a G-rated show or a PG-13 show?
Well, it's based on the guest, Scoble. So you bring what you want, as long as you bring one of those pairs of headphones to my house.
You like those? The new Apple headphones came yesterday, and I haven't taken them off. They're really cool. And in fact, we should talk a lot about what's coming, because a whole new world of spatial computing is coming. The rich people are going to learn this in January at the World Economic Forum, because World Economic Forum named two of the technologies, the spatial computing technologies, as the most important tech trend for next year. So, right, well, and I think that's why you have me on right now. So you want to hear what Benioff is going to hear next month at the World Economic Forum, because that's where he goes to learn his stuff, and you're going to learn it a month early, so you can go in the office. Hey,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Mark, if you're listening, look, we get a preview here of what's to come. Well, Robert, you've been really ahead of AR, VR, mixed reality, XR, whatever we want to call it.
A lot of things. Benny wrote the foreword for my second book that I co-wrote with Shell Israel. And he did that because I always see things before he does. Sometimes. Right? If you're a billionaire, you have a lot of people like me reporting to you cool things, right? That's what I know the game.
All right. Well,
look, cool things. I can get an invite to show him cool things, right?
Look at this love for you right here. I guess it's going to be a PG-13 show today with you on. All right. Well, let's jump in, because I have 17 minutes with you before I have to drop. Look at this. You're getting all kinds of love for the shirt. This is fantastic. Yeah. All right. Well, over the last few years, you've been ahead of the game on all things XR, right? And so let's talk about, though, before we get into spatial,
and autonomous cars. And
well, that's true, because I interviewed you in my report, which was the first industry report on the state of the autonomous car, but if I think about it, going back all the years to the web and how much we've geeked out over all of this stuff on the left side of the bell curve, it's safe to say you've been ahead of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Specifically,
I'm going to take you on a little walk while you talk that.
Look at this. All right, I'm going to get my question out sooner or later. The reality is that AR, VR, XR, it has not materialized at a consumer level or at a wow level for the masses that we had all hoped or expected.
Right.
So what's been holding it back? And then I guess it's going to have to open the door to getting to what Apple's going to do about it in 2021.
Yeah, and I'm taking you outside. I'm on a podcast, Ryan. See you. I take you outside because I want to show you something that's fun to think about this new world. Because I live in Campbell, California, near Netflix, right? And that guy is a chip designer for Apple. And he comes home with a different car every couple of days. Right now he has a Porsche. But he works for the CarPlay team. And for 2 years, Apple has been hiding a spatial computer literally right next to my property line. For 2 years, this thing has been here. And that's the future of spatial computing. It'll be in all Volvos next year, right? And so I figured out what my next door neighbor is doing by talking to a lot of people recently about what's going on in the world.
Well, all right. So I want to bring everybody along to where you are, because you're always ahead. So
I am.
You
were asking about VR. Why hasn't VR taken off?
Yes.
Oculus Quest is $300, and it sold about 1 million units last year. This year, I'm expecting to sell 2 to 5 million, right? Somewhere in there. But what Apple is about to do is decimate Facebook's business, right? Facebook is still going to be relevant next year because, one, it's Facebook. 2, it's has the credibility to even go on the Apple products and do a whole lot of things because of its investments in Oculus and the VR face. But there's a lot of problems with VR. And I think Apple learned a lot of things from Google Glass. Remember when Steve Jobs told Walter Isaacson, "I've figured out TV," or something like that? I know how to disrupt TV. So the product that he was talking about hasn't shipped yet, and it will in 2022. And in 2022, when you're wearing this product, it's going to bring a new Siri, a new Google, a new search engine, a new digital map. And that's why I came outside, because I really need to explain how this new digital map works, this new high resolution 3D map that's coming, which will basically know everything about you. So there's a huge amount of privacy conversation we have to have between now and 2022 when you're scanning your house, right? But we should understand how this works first and understand some of the use cases that are going to come. Now, Apple drove a mapping car down this street, right? And when it did, it turned this whole street into a little cube. Millions of little cubes. Billions of little cubes. They're called volumetric pixels. And the front of my house has been already seen by the 3D camera on the Apple car, and has already mapped my neighborhood in these sugar cubes. And these sugar cubes, once it gets laid down as a 3D map, every sugar cube in 2022 is going to have a virtualized microphone, so you can talk to this cube, a virtualized speaker so the cube can talk back, and a virtualized display so it can show you anything, right? So on your front lawn, when you get the headphone next year, not this one, because this one is giving you just a little taste of the future. The one that comes next year is going to have all the computers up here for the visual computer that sees the sugar cubes, that makes the sugar cubes, right? And it'll have a 3D LiDAR on it that sees the world like a robot sees the world, right? So if you go to a warehouse and see how a robot works and understand how it works, it sees the world as points of data, as sugar cubes, right? And a robot can move around the sugar cubes. Now, hopefully a Tesla comes by in the next couple minutes, because every 10 minutes or so, a Tesla drives down my street. It also has a layer of sugar cubes, but it refreshes the sugar cubes every time it drives by. So think about how up to date the now the Apple world.
You need the right kind of sugar cubes.
What's that?
You're breaking up there.
Sorry.
You froze
I went out of Wi-Fi range right there. You know that there's a dead zone in the driveway right there. In fact, this map is going to keep track of stuff like that. Like, don't go into that zone, right? There's a dead zone there. Right?
So let's bring the sugar cubes into something around, like, so make spatial computing. Take us on the path, because what we saw spatial audio with Bose last year.
By the way, a path is real important, because Steve Jobs told his executives, and if you're an Apple executive instead of a Salesforce, I'm sure you guys go through similar training of what is your values and how should you look at the world, right? Well, he teaches his executives how to go through paradigm shifts, because Apple's gone through 3 of them, right? And one of the paradigm shift pieces of advice that they really bang home is that you have to think about the customer's pathway, that you have to think about the customer's journey. How are you going to get, we all know the next paradigm is going to be a pair of glasses on your face that sees this sugar cube world, that lets you manipulate the world, right? And lets you have augmented reality. Facebook knows this. Apple knows this. Microsoft knows this. Google knows this. Amazon knows this. Tesla is building augmented reality into its cars. It knows this. right? I'm sure Mark Benioff is trying to think about how to come up with new things for these devices when they finally come, right? In R&D labs and stuff like that. So when this device comes next year, they're going to take us on a little journey. And the first journey is audio first. You got to hear the new virtual world, this sugar cube world first. Then you can see the world by holding up your phone. And then in 2022, there's a visor that's going to plug into the next device that brings two 4K Sony displays to you, right? So you can live in the world. You can live in the sugar cube world, right? And that's all coming in 2022. So this world is going to change and change very fast for every company. Our ideas of privacy are going to radically change in 2 years. Our ideas of everything is going to change because every company is going to have to rethink themselves soon, right?
Yep. Well, because essentially what we're talking about is in a whole new sort of experience architecture that only a few privileged folks that have access to these early platforms can imagine. We did see some pretty incredible experience architecture coming from the likes of Magic Leap, and while it might have been too early, what it wasn't too early was actually giving us a taste of what's possible, right? So inspiring a whole new generation of experienced architects. But in this new world that we're going to start with, I think...
By the way, I love that you call it experienced architects because I think there's going to be a gold rush. In fact, I know there's going to be a gold rush. It's already underway to build experiences for these devices, right? Hollywood is going to make a lot of money. Netflix, which is just up the street here, is going to make a lot of money in this experience world because what do we want to do? Well, let's try putting the Beatles on the front lawn. I was talking to musicians yesterday, right? And Mark, I know Mark loves music. Me and Neil Young and him hung out. So that's great. So let's say I bring in the Beatles from their master, which they have more tracks than they have on their stereo, Spotify tracks, right? And they remaster it with AI to separate Ringo Starr from everybody else. And you can place the band here and hear it in the headphones next year. Because next year, there's going to be a 3D sensor. It's going to see the lawn. It's going to see the sugar cubes. It's going to say, hey, put Ringo Starr on one of those sugar cubes, right? And right, a little tiny, it's tiny. You can't, it might be an inch or two, or it might be a millimeter, or it might be smaller than a millimeter. In 10 years, when I get the Salesforce glasses, I'm expecting half a millimeter, right? A lot of resolution is coming in our future, right? This is the black and white world that's coming next year, right? So I can walk around the band. I can walk in between the band members and hear the difference. And then I can grab Ringo and take him in the kitchen. And that's the difference. Now next year, we're going to have audio with infinite surround sound, not 7.1, surround sound put on that tree, right? That tree is talking to me in a movie or something like that, right? It has infinite sound stage. I sold a lot of speakers in the 1980s at my consumer electronics store because I could demonstrate a better sound stage on speakers, right? Right, John? You know this.
Absolutely.
You probably have a badass pair of those speakers because you have a badass piano, right?
I have 3 badass pianos and great speakers.
There we go. And now your headphones are going to blow those away because you're going to be able to hear every track by walking around it in space, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So think about being Skrillex, a music innovator, right? You might disagree with that statement, but that's what he is, right? He writes his sounds, or he makes his sounds in 3D on a, right? So what? And another one there, and another one there, and I'm walking around and enjoying a new kind of concert, right? Or I can recreate on my front lawn services. Like, Brian, you want to go to Coachella? Load an app into your glasses, right? Into your visor. Go together. Friday night.
Right? I'm gonna pause you right there.
But I'm gonna be on the front line, and you're gonna be on your front line, and then we're gonna be going to, a Skrillex concert together.
Yeah. So, because I have 4 minutes before I have to jump, and then John's going to take over the rest of the conversation. What you just said, a couple things. One is we don't even know who the next Skrillex is for this world, right? And we also don't even know who the Imagineers, to borrow from Disney, are for designing these worlds, but they all need to be designed. And so if we take that and we also think about what's existed for a few years, which is the void out of Utah, then that Coachella example then becomes we have infinite sound, we have immersive reality, and now we have haptics, right? We can feel the experience as well.
And we haven't even started talking about the search implications of this, because this one product, I can see a credible reason for it to take a lot of things away from Google. If it leaves anything, right? Everybody's suing Google right now, right? So over antitrust, right? You can't comment, I can comment. Anyways, Apple can take a lot of search, because I can say, "Hey Siri, how?"
We got to get you back into the zone, Scoble.
Sorry.
That's the space station.
Let's there's a dead spot right there. It should just warn me, when I'm up there, and just stand back. You're losing Wi-Fi. Either move forward or move back, because right here the computer can't decide which way to go. Where was I going with this? In the future, we're going to have experiences on the front lawn. That's why being an experienced architect, it sounds like a brilliant career move. So
yeah. Just for a plug, I talked about this in X a few years ago, which was the idea that experience design and experience architecture was going to build a new world. And I talk about it now in terms of spatial experience design. So it's accounting for the fact that we have this world, we have this world, we have this world that we're going to be designing for virtually, but we also have the real world. And these two things can coexist as well. So we can build bridges from physical to digital in ways that are incredible. So that's actually the concept of an idea that I'm working through. Scoble, I'm going to have to bounce, but I do.
We can cover this for years. I mean, this is a 40-year product cycle. Probably.
Well, you're gonna walk John through as many of those years as possible, and John, I'm sure, has amazing questions as well. So I will turn it over to you, John, and I'll just sneak off quietly in the sunset.
Okay, Brian, take care. We'll see you on the 29th. Hey, man, I just realized that you and I have known each other for probably about, 16, 17 years. I mean, I met you when you were starting out, when you were at Microsoft, when it was, podcasts. And I've seen you through all these different incarnations. So it's great to hook up again and get the
it is. Let me go. I don't know what you can hear, because I haven't really tested out these headphones much other than on your call. But I was just at a street with a bunch of trucks driving by, and kids are now on Zoom calls and running around, right?
Yeah.
Here's one of my kids right there. So this headphone has 9 microphones on it. And at Microsoft, I learned what an array microphone does. If you have a lot of data about the world, right? Because if you have 2 or 4 microphones, like this one has 9 microphones, right? And a computer knows where the sound is coming from, like your mouth, right? It can focus all the attention on the mouth and do noise canceling. That's really, really next level. Mm-hmm. This doesn't yet have that capability for things in the world, but probably knows where my mouth is, because that already got figured out.
Well, there's this whole art form called field recordings, where people go out with high quality digital recorders and they capture street sounds in, on the beach in Rio de Janeiro, or, what a night market in Thailand feels like. And there's actually a market for these things. People sell them, and you can kind of immerse yourself in an auditory environment that kind of conjures this up. So I'm being someone that traffics a lot in music, I'm really curious to know what you think the future of this is, because it seems to me that from what you're saying, and I'm just taking a little bit of a core sample from what you're saying, I'm in a deep conversation with people about reimagining theater because, Broadway theater as we know it is dying, right? And so the ability to virtualize the performance environment, the ability to create new kinds of experiences where, you as the subscriber to the theater series can, walk in between the actors and, you can kind of create a whole different portfolio of experiences for yourself.
Yes.
You're not sitting in a chair, right?
Let's cover stuff that actually will get done first because there's actual real money involved, and that's football or soccer, right? Soccer in the rest of the world and some in the United States, football here in the United States, right? They're putting 100 cameras around the stadiums right now to capture the field in a volumetric field of, right now they can show you about 1 million of these cubes, right, on your coffee table. So they can show you the football field in 3D and they can fly you in between the players. It's pretty crazy when you see it. And this is coming from a big company, by the way, right? Public company. So if that's the world in 2020 where we're able to grab TVs, like, right, with these visors on, you're going to have virtualized TVs everywhere. So it's going to completely warp what we think of as screens, right? Because now the screen can be virtualized in the air and I can grab it with my hands. I can see my hands with the 3D sensor. The AI is really good at that now. And I can make the screen bigger and put it on the coffee table. And then I can say, okay, Siri, start up volumetric. Or it could just start it up because it sees a space there, right? That I left for the football stadium, right? And so that's happening at 3 million voxels in 2022, which is enough to read the numbers on the backs of the jerseys of the football players, right? And that's going to be how everything starts to change because it's still not perfect for some things like entertainment. And entertainment really wants 100 million of these headsets sold before they're going to spend $200 million on a movie, right? That's done this way. But it's coming. It's just maybe a couple more years, 3 years, right? So by 2025, we're getting really mind-blowing entertainment in these devices because it's not just Apple. Facebook is coming and Google's coming, right? With devices that show you the sugar cube world, right? Yeah.
Well, it means that people who get familiar with the new production, the aesthetics and the mechanics of production have an unusual amount of autonomy now because you can create a proprietary venue, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can create, everybody's moaning and groaning about the fact that jazz clubs are dying out in New York, but anybody can start a jazz club now, A
good example of this is Facebook Horizons that just came out this year. And in there, you can create a virtual world, right? It lets you put down trees and buildings and things and water and stuff like that. And then you can invite your friends in to party with you in your creation, right?
Yeah.
In virtual creation. It's just sugar cubes. We're just going to change everything, right?
Right.
So,
oh my God.
So we're going to see this sugar cube world evolve for 40, 50 years, like the personal computer did. And eventually it'll get closer and closer to our brains, right? Because what they're doing is learning about how we think with these devices. It's going to eventually see what I'm looking at. It's going to see everything in the world that I'm holding, that I'm touching, that I've eaten, right? So it'll say, "Hey, you ate too many donuts today. You got to go for a run,"
Right?
Or something.
Like take your insulin.
Yeah. You're not doing good today. What's going on?
Well, and also,
do you need a therapist to talk about your food habits?
Right, and then instead of getting a text message from Stanford Health, your doctor appears and chides you because you're, and that's far more reinforcing, right? Than
On my blog right now, I put my last physical, which was a complete body MRI scan. And then the doctor went through my body point by point, looking for cancers, looking for brain injuries, looking for blocked arteries, embolisms. He was you can see it in the video, how he walks through your body.
Yeah.
Well, now I have the scans on my phone, so I can go through my head anytime I want. And the doctor who is trained to look for a certain thing can
Mhm.
too, right?
Mhm.
So now he gave me crap for having a bad back and not exercising, right? Because he said that's the way I'm going to avoid problems in the future. He could see my discs in my back are starting to compress together. He was giving me shit about that, right? So
Well,
that's the
to
future of
the,
medicine, right? It's preventive medicine. It's the future of everything. Everything is going to be predictive soon because this is what AI is doing to us.
Right, you're going to have. I mean, the algorithms haven't really been invented yet because the data hasn't been abundant enough. But as soon as there's enough data to make inferences, and then you're, like an army of one. I mean, there's a whole cloud of, predictive inferences around you as the client, as the patient. Medicine is going to change completely because it's not going to be event driven and your annual physical. It's going to be flow driven, which is, you're generating data constantly and you're making adjustments constantly. So, you can catch things way early. You can change the trajectory way early and in sort of smaller but more meaningful ways over time. And, maybe we all can live to be 100 because of that or beyond that.
I look at length of life differently because my mother-in-law was in a old folks home, a convalescent home for 8 years with a brain tumor and stuff like that. And she couldn't watch. So I got to study end of life in depth, right? And those people aren't having a good time. They're not at Coachella partying, right? But here's what's going to happen when I get put in here. Put me into a VR headset or put me into a device like the one I'm talking about, because now I can go biking through the south of France with you on my biking machine that's out in the lobby, right? Or I can watch a movie with you or play poker with you, or even perform music together with you, right? You're seeing all the music stars. Taylor Swift says, I didn't even perform this song yet. And it's out on the internet, and we didn't even meet and do it together yet. We did her latest album completely virtual, right?
Right, and you can also then create performance software that is sort of like the power tools, right? I mean, the music is interesting now because as it gets divorced from analog instruments that require 20 years of finger practice to get the eye-hand coordination and all of that, to things where you push buttons and you create beautiful music. The music technology becomes like an amplifier for your creativity. Yeah. And so you could be sitting in a nursing home with minimal musical skills, but make really complex, interesting creations with somebody else, right? Which is very important because music has a lot of, kind of wellness and medical impact, on your system.
Yes. In fact, the devices that are coming that control your visual and control your audio, right? Because even in this headphone that just came out yesterday, I'm not hearing the real world. I'm never hearing the real world. I'm not hearing the analog world, right? Which is the smooth wave coming to your head. I'm hearing what Apple wants me to hear from the real world, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's really interesting because you're hearing the sugar cubes. You're not hearing anything real, right? So they can augment everything, right? They can make it better. They can make it easier to hear things with these 9 microphones on, right? So noise canceling is going to be next level. Experience is going to be next level because if we're going dancing at a rave tonight, or I'm going to your concert, for instance, now you're in my living room, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you can also gamify the experience in interesting ways. You can put Easter eggs in there, right? I mean, you can do all kinds of weird stuff.
Infinite. In fact, that's how Apple could get you to scan your house. Siri could say, hey, thanks for buying these beautiful new headphones, right? We've left fun things on everything. Just walk around and touch things, right? If you pick up a cube, it's going to go, oh, he has a cube in his hand. Yeah, and it knows what kind of cube this is because of the pattern on the face, right? The computer vision knows this is a merge cube, and this is actually a very interesting company.
Well, it's a prize, I mean, like one out of every 10,000 of you is going to get a free set of headphones, but you got to look for it. And, they're playing.
No. Siri's going to say to you, we've left little audio goodies in your world. Go pick things up and it'll make a funny sound. Or open a drawer and it'll play music. Or open a closet door and put your head in and you'll hear all these bats on the surfaces of the closet, right?
Yeah.
And what it's doing is scanning everything, understanding where everything is, and then starting to run all this AI, right? And be able to understand, oh, that's a chair, that table, that's a wall, that's a floor, that's a mirror, right? Yeah. And all of those have to change the properties that I'm seeing and hearing, right? Because if I'm next to a glass wall, I'm having a lot more reflectivity eventually. If you want to make augmented reality seem real, which everybody does, right? We all
that's the goal. The Holy Grail. So
the goal is to put Taylor Swift in your kitchen. You cut half of the kitchen table up and you put her in the other half, and that's coming in 2022.
I wanted to cook her favorite dessert for me, but that's another story. So
she could teach you.
Yeah, she could show me. Right, demo
in the glass. And by the way, once you scan your entire house, Apple knows everything you have in the house.
Right.
So if you say, hey, Siri, do I have everything I need to make lasagna? It'll say, no, you need pasta. Do you want it to be ordered from Amazon or from Apple Store?
Right? Yeah, just click here. One click.
Yes.
Right.
And it'll be there in an hour, and then you can make lasagna.
Right. The drone will fly through your window, and then you've got it knocked.
So, we don't need to go too far with this, but yes, right.
So spatial computing and the terminology of sugar cubes. Is sugar cubes a term of art, or is that how you're describing it?
That's how I'm describing it. This is a volumetric pixel.
Right.
Right. A pixel is a point on a computer that can have a display or it can make a sound. Right.
Right.
A volumetric pixel is a pixel with 6 faces. Right. And it can have anything on each of the faces. It can sound, however, you could make this cube and replace the look of it into SpongeBob, and he's talking to you.
Yeah, it's a computational in a way, or it's an intelligent pixel, or it's a next generation.
Well, it's a depth pixel first,
right?
Because that's the first thing. They cut the world up into trillions of these cubes.
Yeah.
Right? And so think of the air. Right here is a cube. It just has a property of invisible. I can see through the cube, right? But it's still there. I can actually put Yosemite on that cube, right? Or your piano concert on that cube, right? And now I feel like I'm in your house listening to you play piano.
Yeah.
I'm unlike looking at you in a 16:9 screen, right?
Right, exactly. In a 2-dimensional way. Well, I do hope you come by and do some music and see. I'm in South of Market Street in a new loft, and it's my perfect ideal studio environment. So I finally have room for all of my equipment, and it's in the process of getting set up. So consider this your lab in South of Market Street for doing whatever crazy shit you want to do.
Since this is a Salesforce show, we should talk to business people about this world. One, big brands are going to be built in audio next year.
Mm-hmm.
Audio experiences first with visual on the phone and a scanner on the phone, right? So you got to do a visual component too. And then 2022, we're going to be able to completely change. The whole world is going to change when you get this visor, because you can change anything in the world to anything, right? Now, you'll start in your living room, changing your TV and having a lot of fun in your living room, playing new kinds of games and new kinds of music and new kinds of experiences. But by 2023, at the end of in 2023, they're going to come out with a lightweight pair of glasses.
Right.
So think about audio today. You're going to have to rebuild. Every brand is going to have to rebuild its audio signature. So think about the AT&T, 4 chimes. That has to be done in spatial audio, and you have to rethink it, right? And you have to rethink pretty much your entire business for this world. Now, I'm telling you this in advance, so you have a few years to get used to it.
Get ready.
And get ready. And Walmart already is getting ready. Amazon's already getting ready, right? The auto industry with Volvo is getting ready. The music industry is already getting ready. I'm talking to them all. The construction industry is even getting ready. And there's going to be competitive products for different use cases, right? Because this Apple device while it's a great Zoom headphone, it's a little heavy and a little big, right? And also, I might not want a $550 headphone on people's heads just to talk to customers better, right?
Right.
And so there's going to be new devices that are going to run warehouses and run retail stores. Right?
So, Rob, in the old days, we talked about sugar cubes, having little drops of, psychedelic drugs on them. And you're talking now about sugar cubes in a way that is pretty mind expanding, although without pharmaceuticals.
This is digital. Pfizer said this is a kind of digital drug, right? And at USC, they're doing research on the brain to use VR to fix things like PTSD and dementia. So these are going to be very powerful devices for a lot of people who are left out of computing today. Blind people, for instance. These things are going to know where everything is in your house. So you're going to be able to, it's going to be able to tell you where things are and how to navigate the world to the walking around and taking buses and stuff. It's going to know everything, right?
Yeah, right. Ultimately, it's really turning reality inside out, right? So now we have a perfect, simulacrum of the analog world, and it's malleable, and it's you can work with it in a way that you can't work with the analog world. So it's like Ready Player 3 in a way, it's like where things are headed. So I'm going to suggest the following, because we're at the bottom of the hour and the show is essentially over. Although the show, the Scoble show never stops.
Never stops. It's always somewhere.
I'm looking forward to taking our conversation offline because there's more stuff I want to talk with you about. But meanwhile, it falls to me to thank you for being here and for sharing your sugar cubes with us. So thanks. Okay.
It's going to be fun.
To be continued. Great to see you. Okay, Gregarious, are you with us? He is somewhere. Rob is still doing his sugar cube thing. Here's Gregarious.
I am here.
You are always here. So that was a little bit of a preview of where I think some of the discussions about 2021 and intersections are going, because we're going to want to go a little bit deeper into certain topics. We're going to, be experimenting with different aspects of the format. We may do some panel and interactive discussions. I think Brian and I are going to be a little bit more present. And so you got a great exemplar of someone who, it's like turn Rob on and you start to get amazing stuff. And, the question is, how does form follow function in a way? So thank you all for being here. And Gregarious, why don't you play us out?
All righty. Bye, everybody. Have a happy holiday.